Hey, everybody. Today we're going to do the second part of the neurology of addiction. Um, so it's going to be kind of fun in a little bit of a different way, because last time we talked about, all these interesting things with addictions and how it's actually based in the brain. For you to describe something as a disease, there has to be a defect in an organ or a cell or a body system that causes the symptoms. And that's the disease model. There's a cause, whatever could cause the defect. And again, they always use if diabetic, it's probably your pancreas doesn't process sugar. And then you got to, it won't make insulin, so you can't regulate. That's a disease. You get a brain injury, your brain is actually injured, and you'll have like a TBI, you'll have different things. Dementia is the breakdown of the connections in the brain. So if addiction fits this model, it's because the brain is the organ involved, right? But we can't see the brain issues, right? We just see the results. That's when someone gets dementia, but they look the same. But they're not the same. You get a brain injury, and people are acting out, but you can't see the injury. It's again, the example is always that's kind of sad, is the military guy will get a TBI, a traumatic brain injury. So he's got traumatic, it's documented, but we see the behavior. He's drinking too much. He won't go to work. He's argumentative. He gets in fights. So he ends up getting a bad discharge where he can't get any benefits to get the TBI fix, right? And some of that is because the guy doesn't want to think he has a TBI, won't admit it or won't accept it. And then, there's this. But the midbrain is where addiction happens, right? And that's because it's the survival part of your brain. No planning, can't think through time is your forebrain, but your midbrain thinks in the now. I need to breathe. That's why you can't hold 99.99% of the population cannot hold their breath till they pass out, right? Eventually you'll take a breath and, it's just the way it is. So the midbrain is the survival brain. And what's happened, you've reorganized the three things your midbrain's there for: to eat food, drink water to keep you alive, find shelter, kill or be killed, fight or flight, right? That's again to keep you alive, and to procreate. That's it. What happens is the midbrain takes over, and it's drugs of abuse, alcohol and other drugs, give so much of a boost that it becomes the number one thing that the midbrain thinks it needs to survive. That's why people that don't have this issue do not understand that if that part of their brain activates, and they call it obsession or compulsion, that's all they can think about, and it's like they need it to survive. That's what happens when someone's in massive withdrawals. They call it, a lot of people used to call it dope sick. They're not going to die. They're going to be sick as shit because their body is trying to detox, trying to do all this, but the brain's going, give me the drug. It'll make me feel better, and very few people die from any kind of withdrawal, right? Unless they choke on their own vomit or they have a heart attack, and other things. In fact, more people die from alcohol withdrawal than all the others, right? But also what happens is because of the, and they call that the craving, right? Where you crave it. It's a physiological response to what your brain thinks is a neurochemical deficiency, right? And that's where you get the sweats and this and that, right? And because of this craving, the choice argument fails. People from the outside say, well, just don't do it, right? And once craving sets in, it begins to control all your behavior. Even though, people say you're not going to die, it feels like you're going to die. I always say, where most people withdraw from heroin and almost all drug, it's not hospitals and it's not detox centers, it's jails. And it's a brutal detox. You always, every once in a while you hear somebody had a heart attack or they they died and you committed suicide while they were in jail because they were in withdrawals, you know, they just leave you locked up in the cell, right? So anyway, and what happens when this stuff's going on and you're feeling those needs, that's where you see the behaviors, lying, manipulating, making excuses, rationalizations, things like this. So now today, part 2, and you can review part 1, but the principles beyond detox is the important thing about drug or alcohol treatment, right? And this is what we got to do, right? The 2 tasks of all addiction treatment is to bring the prefrontal cortex back online and give the alcoholic and the addict credible tools to manage stress and decrease craving. Coping skills, stress relief, social supports, because we're social creatures, safe environments, right? I mean, if you go into detox, you go into treatment, and you dry out, and let's say you got 30 days, but you're going back to an environment where everybody's drinking and drugging, it's probably not going to end well, right? That's why, you know, so that's what the goal of treatment is, right? But each alcoholic has to find something that's meaningful, right? And the 2 things that work the most is spiritual growth, spiritual development, personal development with it, you know, getting into personal development. And that includes like exercise and getting in shape, right? Right. And so what happens, you know, AA and all therapy works in the prefrontal cortex. That's why we're in highly stressed moments and your midbrain's online, you can't use your prefrontal cortex at that moment. It's very hard, right? So the division of labor is AA, behavior therapy. The things they do in treatment is to bring the prefrontal cortex to give emotional meaning. The biggest people have to reframe in their head is the fact that what used to be the answer, drugs and alcohol aren't the problem, they were the answer. Now they're the problem. So you got to get a different meaning. And, you know, there's some thought, and some people like, you know, there's medication assisted recovery. I'm not going to go down that path. I'm not a medical doctor, but you know, I have you still got to bring the prefrontal cortex back online, right? And then what you're doing is you're calming what they call like that tiger response in your brain, right? And it'll calm the craving. And of course, if you know hypnosis and NLP, that can help speed all of this up. Because like I said in the first part, what happens when you abuse drugs or alcohol, gambling, sex, drugs, the pleasure threshold is so high. What would be normal fun doesn't work anymore. And that can take like 18 months to come back online, right? And so that's where a lot of people relapse. The first month or 2, they're on what they call pink cloud. I love this. And then it's like, you know, 3-4 months in, they're like, this is boring. Nothing's going on. And, you know, let's say their family, they have a cookout and everybody goes. People are like, wasn't that fun? It was great. And, you know, you weren't drunk and you were doing this. And the person's going, it was boring. Right? Because they didn't get the dopamine response. Right? And again, the definition of addiction is a dysregulation of the midbrain dopamine system, decreased functioning of that. So you lose control, you have craving, and persistent drug or alcohol use despite negative consequences. You can't scare an alcoholic or a drug addict into stopping. You know, not too long here, they had somebody, they'd been sober a little while, but they started drinking again. And then they got in a car wreck, hurt somebody, and it was their 3rd car wreck. They're going to serve 20 to life, right? That's the ultimate negative consequence, but it didn't stop the person. So addiction is the disease, and the way we know this is drugs of abuse and use set off the genetic stressors, and it dysregulates your dopamine system, which leads to what we see is loss of control, craving, and all of those things, right? And so really the truth is it's a hard disease or issue to treat to extinction, because when you go back to watch Levels and we talk about, there's going to be unhappy rat cages people are stuck in, right? Where they live, the family, the things like that. But the best way is to prevent it, to give people the tools, right? And honestly, that's why I came up with what we're doing here. It's to get people, back into the system. And what a lot of people don't understand, especially in the hypnosis, the NLP, and the coaching world, a lot of people seem to be very anti-12-step. They don't understand that it's a community. I was at a conference once and was talking to people, and they're like, "Yeah, but it's like you switched addictions. You're doing this, da, 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 da." And I'm like, "It's a community." "What do you mean it's a community?" I go, "I've seen all you guys here at these conferences for 10 years. 10 years. Why do you come here? You're not making any money. You're not teaching a pre or post class. You're not selling a lot of products. Yeah, you're here to learn a little bit, but why do you keep coming?" Most people keep going to conferences for the community, and they'll find a community they like. And they're, all the hypnosis organizations, there's not so many NLP organizations, but even some of the coaching and the people that run it, especially the guys that understand like funnels and that's what they're constantly talking about. Create a community, create a community, create a community, right? Because if not, you'll default back to the old communities. Why, we see that. So that's a little bit about, what we need to do is bring that prefrontal cortex back online, which takes a little bit of time, and you need some kind of support system, right? Next Monday, I'm going to talk about an interesting concept that the 12-step world uses in a much different way, but it can be used for things like manifestation, changing other aspects of your life. And it's really pretty cool. So that's the important part. So I just wanted to throw that out there. If you have any questions, just reach out. And let me end the